All right, I am John Dew, host of The Wholehearted Man. I'm here with Dr. Susan Campbell, and we are going to be talking about dating and love and all those fun topics. And Susan's got a book called Truth in Dating, and I have worked with Susan myself on a couple workshops, and I am having her on today to discuss this book because where I am at and what I'm working on in life is, let me turn this down here, I'm kind of in a new phase of my life. You've helped me with some things over the years, and I am going to be getting back into the dating scene soon. I know we haven't spoken in a while because the last time we spoke, I was seeing someone or beginning to date, and that only lasted in total just maybe over 2 months. And since then, it's been almost a year. I decided not to date for a while and to work on myself and get things straight. And so as I get back into this, I wanted to talk to you about it, but also with what I'm doing. In that meantime, I've been working with creating the Wholehearted Man kind of series of what I'm working with for men and what's it mean to be a real man, what that looks like as far as being a partner to a woman, being a father, being a boss, being a friend, just all encompassing. So welcome. Thank you for coming on the show here. And I guess my first question would be, what caused you to create this book, Truth in Dating, and what is the premise of it?
Okay. So the cause was I saw a lot of fear in the dating world. I've been a psychotherapist for 50 years, and I coach a lot of people who are attempting to find true love, either online or by going to events or just through meeting people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of discouragement. There's a lot of fear. I would hear things like, it's a jungle, it's a battleground. I can't take it. I can't do this anymore. And I was also dating at the time. So that's the second thing that caused me or motivated me
you
to
could
write
relate.
the book was, I'm teaching what I need to learn.
Right.
I wondered, I wasn't having a bad time like that. I really have a good time meeting people and taking each relationship as it comes for what it is. And of course, that's because I've done so much inner work for all these years. I'm not just a therapist. I'm working on myself all the time.
Right.
I realized that my attitude, which is relationship as an awareness practice, that everything that happens to me is for my own learning, growth, expansion, spiritual evolution, to become more whole, wholehearted, a wholehearted human being. So I'm picking up on your title.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And that's, and I realized dating can be a deep and wonderful practice where two people agree to be accurate and truthful mirrors to each other, thereby the title, Truth in Dating. And just whatever happens, even if you don't have more than 2 months, like you said, you don't feel like a failure. I felt so sad when I saw people feel like a failure when things don't continue.
Right.
John, most dating relationships should end.
Right.
You're finding out about the other person, helping them find out about you. You're practicing relationship skills like expressing feelings and needs. That's what dating is for. And if there's chemistry and if there's common values and a common life vision, then yeah, you go for it. You give it a real shot.
Right.
But a lot of times it takes a few months to even find that out. So my motives were basically what I said, the pain and my own point of view, which I thought could help people not have so much pain in the dating world.
Well, right. So let me ask you, I learned, that's always what I'm doing, going through is what was my past experience? What can I learn from that and bring that forward? So without going into all the details of the past, I was in a relationship that didn't go well. That was in for several years. What I took from that and learned or what I learned from that, I took and was able to use in the dating scene, and or in this particular dating this person, and it did narrow it down, obviously, from years to just a couple of months. And then I went back and looked at that, and it's like, okay, I'm going to take that now, that knowledge, and really kind of step it up a notch moving forward.
That's good.
But so correct me here, but my thinking is I don't want to waste time. And I don't mean that in the sense of, oh, you didn't check every box off, I'm out of here. It's just trying to find kind of a happy medium between, being realistic in dating someone and then not also being in charge and in control of myself and just kind of letting it happen. So I want to be realistic because people are people, and we're all flawed, but also have the ability to be kind of in charge of my destiny on that. And that's why you popped into my head in the truth in dating, because I think, the sooner that can kind of be established, the sooner that can kind of be worked out. And I'm sure there's no preset formula, for time, and that's not necessarily what I'm looking for. But, in your book, you talk about asking questions, right? And about being honest and being open with the other person and having that agreement. And how soon, in your opinion, of starting to date should that conversation be had?
Okay, so what you're referring to, John, is what I call the truth in dating conversation. And I put a little box around it because it's a few sentences where you introduce to a new potential dating partner the idea of truth in dating. And so how soon, that's the script for that is written in the book, and I can mention that in a minute or two here. But it's basically a script where you say, hey, I've been looking at this whole idea as relationships for learning and development. And it seems that honest communication is one of the best gifts we can give to each other on that journey. And I like you. And I wonder if you want to try this with me, this idea of telling each other the truth, even if it might hurt sometimes.
What a
and
concept.
making that more important than getting to third base or getting a fifth date or getting somebody to marry you. We're not so focused on the outcome. We're focused on an honest process between two people. So that's what you invite them into. And I would say after you know that you like someone and you have a feeling that they like you. Okay. And they might really like you, but not be up for that type of relationship.
Sure.
And I would hope that even if they show some resistance, that you invite them to say, like they might say, if they were really honest, gee, I don't like criticism, and I don't want a relationship where there's any criticism at all. And the things you're saying sound like that to me. So that would be the other person's resistance. So you would inquire about their resistance and try to be reassuring to them that you will be kind, that you're not, it's not what we call brutal honesty. It's simply honesty about what you're feeling and thinking. It's the kind of honesty that we call being transparent. So
and I think that's something
people into, and I'd say, you could do it on the second or third date, basically.
Yeah, I think that's something to define too. Being honest doesn't have to be brutally honest, doesn't have to be hurtful. It can just simply be stated in a way that gets your point across to the other person without just being blunt and throwing it out there, because nobody wants that. So I just think we need to establish that.
It might be hurtful. It might be hurtful because I can be as warm and tender as I can possibly be with a guy that I'm dating. But if he wants a third or fourth date and I'm done, we're going to have an honest, heart-centered conversation about that. And he's going to be hurt. But I've done this many times. I'm really
but I think that's I'm saying in the delivery to the other person, you're being honest, but not spiteful or mean. Doesn't mean that, you can't control after that. After it leaves your mouth, You can only
Mhm.
control it coming out of your mouth. After it leaves, you can't control how somebody else receives that. Back to what you're
But
saying.
you can if you see that they receive it in a
Right.
hurting themselves way, you can really stay with them and go, gosh, I looks like your feelings got hurt and I really understand and I respect you so much for being vulnerable with me like
Right.
this. Let's just keep talking for a while. It's not like I'm going to just deliver my message and walk out the door.
Right. Well,
You're
okay.
human. It's a human to human. That's partly what truth in dating is too. It's not just about honest communication. It's about we see each other as a human being and we treat the other person with
Right.
respect and care. It's not like, people say the jungle there. It's not like the other person is the adversary
Right.
and they're judging me and they're going to check me off their list. That is the attitude a lot of people have.
Yeah. And
And
going
I'm
into it is
offering
negative.
a much more loving, generous attitude towards your fellow human who also is nervous about rejection.
Right.
Everybody's nervous about
Absolutely.
rejection. So it's
Well,
not just you.
yeah, let me ask you. So, oh gosh, what would you say? Well, okay. So where I've come on my journey, not just in the dating but also with my company and everything, and what I've kind of learned is I had kind of a big aha late last year, and I ended up getting rid of two employees, a quote unquote best friend, and
Yeah.
a long term relationship.
Mm.
All within 2 weeks there, because what I kind of came to was I'm done trying to force people to treat me properly. I'm
Yeah.
done trying to get my needs met by somebody who doesn't want to meet them.
Mhm.
Doesn't abscond me from any responsibility from those relationships either. But I kind of came to the point and weeded out where I was in my life, weeded out the people I thought that just there's no chance of that. So if you're in dating, I hear what you're saying when you're
Mhm.
saying, you may say something and then you kind of gauge their response and you can see maybe they're uneasy with that and you try to help them be a little more comfortable and understand where you're coming from. But at what point do you see? That's kind of where I was, and my issue with some of the datings. I spent too much time. I poured too much energy trying to placate the other person or make them understand something when in reality they were being abusive and
Yeah.
they were taking
Yeah.
advantage. So
So how do you
what?
know when to quit? That's a big question in this.
Yeah, because to me it's like I raise my bar very high now, and I'm determined to become the kind of man that attracts the type of woman I desire. And in doing that, I'm going to tell you how I feel. I'm going to be straight. I'm going to be
Mhm.
honest with you. I'm going to be kind about it.
Mhm.
But if you have a adverse reaction to, I think, the most basic of communication styles, then it's probably not going to work out because I'm imagining I'm going to spend most of my time having to either sugarcoat or just this deal with the drama. So that's kind of where I'm wondering how much do you
Yeah.
put in because the red flags are there and I've really learned, I feel at least, to see them where I used to be bleaching them all white.
Yeah. Well, uh, we need the truth skill. That other book I wrote was Getting Real, and it's about 10
Mm-hmm.
truth skills.
Mm-hmm.
We need to develop the truth skill of asking for what you want because you cannot expect
Right.
a, da- a dating partner or even somebody you've been married to for 10 years to know what you want at all times,
Right.
even though you've told them quite a number of times before. So, in each moment, if you're good at communicating your needs and feelings and you aren't feeling met, aren't feeling like this other person really wants to give that,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe that's not a match. But a lot of people say, oh, I've given it 2 or 3 years and they're still not meeting my needs, but they have not developed the true skill to ask for what you want in a clear, non resentful way,
Right.
non complaining, not the kind of asking for what you want where you say, oh, you left coffee cups unwashed on the counter last night again.
Right.
That's a complaint.
Right.
You can take any complaint and look deeper into yourself and find the want there, the vulnerable need that's under the complaint. And that's what you need to be delivering. And if you're good at that and your partner is still not, you're not feeling connected and met, you know, that's time to move on.
Yeah.
So whenever that is, but sometimes you yourself need a little time warming up, making sure you feel secure enough in the relationship to ask for what you want. The longer it takes you to do that, the longer you're going to hang around in the not knowing
That's a great
zone.
point. I used to
do some of that. You need to not just rush it too much.
Right.
You know? So that's my answer.
Yeah, no, I like that. I used to ask for what I wanted a little more bluntly in the beginning, and then it wasn't a good relationship, but I ended up trying to go in roundabout ways asking for what I wanted, because I was usually met with I was too needy or insecure or too demanding or too whatever. You know, hindsight, it's like I was actually just, here's what I need, stand up for myself. So I think that skill, I didn't put two and two together till you just told me, but I'm going to go back and really reread that and check that out, because having that skill to just simply ask for what you want, which at the company I'm running, no problem. Here's what I need. I need to hear, and I need to buy this date.
A clear role as the owner of the company.
Right. Yeah.
Easier.
I think that's that's the simplicity of it once you can get that skill. So then that's what shortens the time. It's like, I'm being honest with you. I know how to, basically ask for what I want. And then I'm just gauging your response if you're receptive or not. If you're getting belittled, then that's not good. You shouldn't be in that. You need to go be with somebody who's going to treat you in a more healthy way. If they're receptive to it and you guys can work together, which is back to the Truth in Dating book, then you've got something to work with. So I guess to establish first, do I have somebody that is willing to reciprocate? That's kind of what it comes down to.
Okay, and let me throw a wrench into this nice, neat formula that you and I both just developed. Let's say you really like this person and you're pretty good at asking for what you want in a clear, non-blaming way, but the other person gets triggered when you ask for what you want. I've been in relationships like that. Yeah. Either the partner thinks, or the guy I'm dating thinks, oh, I'm not doing it right. Let's say I ask for what I want during sex, heaven forbid a woman should do that,
right. Right.
And then the man feels like, oh, I'm not doing it right.
Right. Yep.
And that doesn't mean he's a bad partner. Triggers are kind of normal, but couples and even dating people need to know that triggers are something that you can expect to happen when there's an emotional charge. So if I see that, he all of a sudden clams up and shuts down when I'm doing the very best I can to ask for what I want, we'll have to have I'll let him calm down. He's got his button pushed. I've got my button pushed. And, in my latest book, 5-Minute Relationship Repair, I teach people how to calm their nervous systems and look inward and then come back and have a conversation about what just happened. So let's say now we're going to have a conversation an hour or a day later. And I say, here's what I remember happening yesterday when we were trying to make love. What was the experience like for you? And I just draw it out and we talk about it, and we realize that, oh gosh, he got his buttons pushed, and then I get to reassure him that there was nothing he was doing wrong, and we kind of refine our communication. So there's that kind of trigger, and then there's the other trigger where a person might feel controlled. I know you. And you said that you were told that you were too needy or something. Right. So that's even another trigger.
Right. So that's kind of shaming now.
The other person feels like they're not enough, that they have deep doubts about their ability to be nurturing and supportive and loving, that they're kind of deficient in, empathy and giving and that sort of thing. And it might push their button because they realize, geez, I really love John, but every time he asks me for something, I feel like I'm going to fail at it. And so I get my button pushed and I just make it about him. I make it his problem that he's too needy.
Yeah.
So these are all things that happen in dating, just like in marriages. And you got to be ready for those things. That can make all daters feel like failures because it's pretty complicated.
Right. In the last relationship before I took this break, these conversations that we're talking about happened so much more in that relationship. It was beautiful to practice that and to watch that, to come to the other person with something that was an issue, let's say, or just something that you weren't sure of or something you didn't like that was said, and not blowing up and screaming and yelling, but just coming and say, hey, when you did this, it made me feel this, right? The practice in your workshop. And then to have the other person actually mindfully think about it and go, huh, okay, I can see that, I could whatever it is, and have an actual adult conversation about what's going on. And that was one of the most attractive things in the relationship. I mean, it's better than anything else, because if you can't have that, and that was so new to me that it was definitely a big attraction for me. But yeah, it's great. And I would never want to get rid of that, moving forward.
So sometimes you might say, well, I stayed around 2 months and maybe I should only have stayed around 2 weeks. But then you got some good relationship practice in those 2 months too, both of you. And so I think for a lot of people, not just your situation, it can still be beneficial. It's not like a waste of time.
So your latest book is called, what is it? 5-Minute Relationship Repair?
That's it. 5-Minute Relationship Repair. And it's about what to do when one or both partners get triggered, whether it's dating, parenting, or marriage type things.
So it sounds like you've kind of modularly broken down the different sets of either reactions in the 5-minute repair. You're I guess overcoming that being triggered, right? So you can come back to a place to have a cogent discussion with the person. You're also, you've got the dating and the questions to ask. Well, in the truth in dating. So what questions are good to ask? What are some, maybe to ease into that process where you're not coming straight out and going, and I mean, I've been on dates and we've had those conversations where you're able to come across and simply say, because the other person's okay. Like, do you want kids? Do you not want kids? Like, where are you at?
I wouldn't wait for, I feel a little resistance when I hear people say, you have to be a little careful in the beginning and all of that. It depends on how, I'm going to say it depends on how much love you have in your heart versus how much fear. If you have fear, own up to that. And if you're being careful, it's because you're kind of not ready for the big no, like, do you want kids? No, I don't. I've never wanted kids. If you're not ready to hear the answer, don't ask the question. That's going to be your truth barometer. There is no guidelines about that. Me, I can say, are you monogamous? Are you married? First thing, are you married?
Right.
Are you monogamous?
Right.
Do you want kids? Those are sort of, really basic things. Then are you, then addictions. You want to rule out substance abuse or other kinds of things, sex addiction. You want to rule that out, basically. But if you're already in love with somebody who has one of those addictions, then go to a program together. Go to a 12-step program together. But who would want to be with a person whose mind share is so taken up in managing their own internal world that they have no bandwidth for you and love and fun and creativity? Not me.
Right.
Not me. I have standards, but it doesn't mean I look down on people with addictions. But
they're tortured souls.
I admit it. I do not. I've been to 12-step programs with guys, and I've learned a lot, and I love the 12-step programs. But it's so not my path.
Yeah, I've kind of learned that my job is no longer to fix. That's what I was really trying to do in so many Well, in all the relationships, trying to save, trying to fix, trying to be there to the extent of diluting myself because I didn't know what actually I needed. That's why this past year, it's like I came to the realization, I go, for 20 years, I've been in a relationship one way or another, whether married or dating. I think it's okay if I take a year off. I think if I just don't need to be in a hurry to do anything, I've got other interests. I just need to relax and breathe. And it's been great.
That's good.
It's
That's
been
good.
phenomenal.
A lot of us, I mean, you and I might be similar in this. We feel better if we're in a relationship.
Right, I was. That was me.
I always feel better, but sometimes it's good to just, you know, I took a year when I was in my 30s, no less. Took a year and declared myself celibate.
Right.
I mean, that was different than no relationships.
Right.
That was because when I was in my 30s, you could have sex without having a relationship.
Right.
It was a different world.
That's only 10 years ago, so.
Before AIDS and everything. But anyway, I didn't have relationship and I didn't have sex. And that was good.
Yeah, because I'm more of the mindset, like, it's going to happen when it happens. I mean, I'm male. I'll go out and I'll, if I see something eventually that, comes in front of me, I really don't want to. I mean, this is probably a whole nother discussion, but dating apps and stuff like that. I mean, I tried all that and it was kind of gross because it was just a meat market of people, very shallow. And I understand people meet on that and that's great. But I think for me, and I went on a lot of dates because I used to be so shy, believe it or not. I was so shy with women that I just, whatever. My sister told me years ago, she goes, John, if you don't take action, you'll just get whatever comes along. And that's kind of what I did. And so I'm like, as I've been working on myself with you through other things, processes and books and reading and introspection, journaling, one of the things I work or I realize there's something I need to work on. So I go conquer it. That's just kind of how I'm made. So I realized I was shy. I remember getting off the phone a couple years ago, having my first date set up with this girl. And then I went out to this place, got a glass of wine, looked over, there was a girl, went over to her, talked to her, set up a date. And I was on a rampage for 3 weeks. I'm not joking. I think I went on 14 dates between an actual date or just meeting for coffee or lunch. And I was done, but I kind of got over that. And there was nobody that was really, there was kind of one person maybe, but nothing that really appealed to me. And then some other things happened and what have you. But just
you're good at, I just want to say you're good at just going through life and meeting people, apparently, which wasn't always the case. So you've developed.
Right. Well, that's what I mean, I'm literally.
The ice. Not everybody's good at that. And they are going to have to rely on online dating. But we can talk about that in a minute. Because
right.
if your lifestyle takes you where women are, in your case, well,
that's what I'm trying to work on now.
Lifestyle doesn't take you there, then I think the dating apps definitely have a place.
Right. I'm working more.
Not the hookup apps necessarily.
Right. Well, that's a difference. Yeah.
That's a different thing. That's probably not for the truth in dating relationship.
Yeah.
I have nothing wrong with hookups, like I said.
Yeah.
When I was in my 30s. Wow. But
right. Two consenting adults.
Now it's like, if you want hookups, you go to an app. And if you just have a hard time meeting people, because you just, for whatever reason, you might have to use the apps. But I'm delighted that you don't have to, John.
Well, I did all that, though. That was all apps short of one or two people that I met.
Oh, it was. Oh, I see.
No, that's what I'm saying. But I just had to get over it in any way. I mean, I was getting to the point towards the end of that dating cycle where I would just talk to someone and see them and get their phone number. And I mean, that was good for me. But what I'm realizing that I have started doing. What's that? What's that?
I think you have to vet the person a little bit more. Maybe you're going to agree with me here. Like a little more phone conversations, a little more, conversations before you meet somebody, just because it takes a longer time to meet somebody than just have a few phone conversations.
Oh, absolutely.
And not everybody does it my way. That's my approach.
Right. What I've learned is and working on now is to bring myself out into the arena to meet people, to have more people around me. So that's what I've been doing more of and working on, so that I have the physical one-on-one interactions with human beings instead of just, swipe left or swipe right.
Yeah. So where do you go? Where do you meet people, John?
I've been going to some, I don't want to call them necessarily seminars, but a couple seminars. But I have no intention of dating. I'm going there to get out. As rambunctious as I can be, and I can walk into a party and tell jokes and do that. Again, when it came to kind of the girl thing and the people thing more as a personal relationship, it was harder for me. So even forcing myself standing in line at the supermarket to talk to someone, just to say hi, not a female even, doesn't matter, just to say hi, or just something comes up and we can both have something in common to say, oh, look, boy, it's, really raining outside, whatever. I've been working on that.
Moves. You're kind of practicing your connection moves.
Right, with people.
Out in the world right now, and that's good preparation for lots of things.
Right.
That's great.
So, yeah. All right, enough about me.
That's good advice for some of our listeners. Just go out and don't make dating your focus all the time. Especially if you're socially shy or that kind of thing. Just do what John did. It's just learn, just in case you did find that woman at the produce counter attractive. But pretend like in the future, you might find somebody at the produce counter. Right now, it's just a little woman with a baby who is not somebody you're going to,
No, that's exactly. Yeah, it's just getting out there and opening up more with people. It's being more honest with my team members at the office, right? Just kind of opening up overall, developing my skill set, developing myself with or unveiling myself to others. In a way that's not just, also going the other extreme and just inundating them with too much information. Just, saying hi. Because I remember in some of the workshops, that was always a thing where talking to people, sometimes people just, vomit all this stuff onto people, and it's too much. It's kind of, it's overwhelming. So that's a great segue into back to truth in dating. And when you're talking and on a date, right, I guess you pick and choose your questions to be strategic. And you would never want to just necessarily dump all this on the other person and expect probably 99 or 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get a good result of that. They're not going to get a good response to you just, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? Right. There is something to the finesse of strategically peppering in these questions.
I don't know. I don't like to make any rules. I think you have to be how you are. And let's say you're the kind of person that wants somebody, maybe you're the kind of person that wants somebody that can handle, that isn't going to get all bent out of shape if you ask 10 questions in a row. But you might say, there's a few things I like to cover really fast, in a first date, so that we don't both waste time. I mean, this could be somebody's actual personality. It's maybe not your personality, but they could say, I'm giving you models of like a lot of different type of people. And I don't want any of our listeners or you, John, to bend yourself into a pretzel to be the kind of person that you think is going to be appropriate and perfect timing or, any of that. It's better if you humbly and not I'm right and this is what I got to have, in a partner, but more, this is how I am, this is how I like to do things. And I got about 10 questions here, and then we can just banter, and maybe you even secretly have some questions because, like I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s, I've been around the block, I know what I like and don't like. So is it okay if I ask you a few questions? And then you can do the same for me, You could do that. I'm just saying there's no rules.
Gotcha. You got to, it depends on the person and the situation, basically.
Yeah, and I've used the Truth in Dating card game. Some of our listeners will be happy to know that there is a list of questions. Yay, John.
I have the other one. Getting Real.
The Getting Real card
Yeah,
game, which is less
I
focused on relationships.
right.
Mhm.
I've even used that with my daughter when I got back. She was what, 6 at the time. I got to break that back out because she did pretty well. I mean, we had to find some, very basic type questions that she could comprehend. But yeah, it's amazing when you ask these questions and they have to think about them and they start pulling them out and you've worded it in a way that, well, maybe I should read one. Well, let's see. You've got deep dating, getting acquainted, and sex. You've got all these different, or these 3 different topics. Let's see. Tell us about a major change in your life that you made successfully. So this is just in getting acquainted. So these are designed to. I mean, these are actually great. You could take some pictures, put them on your phone or something, or memorize them before you go out, even if you need a little help. And yeah, you're just trying to gauge where the other person's at.
Yeah, and what I've done, I think I even have done it on first dates.
Mm-hmm.
If we're gonna go and have coffee or dinner or something, I'll have the cards there. Just once I mean, I don't think we should start with the cards,
Right,
but
right.
the cards. When I say the cards, folks, I mean the 3 different decks that John referred to that are in the game, and each deck has like about 20 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Like the one you read, and so after I've bantered with him and it feels like, hey, let's keep going here. I'm not ready to walk out the door. Susan Campbell created this game called the Truth in Dating card game. You want to just look at it. And what I'll have people do on the beginning is I'll just throw the cards out there on the dining room table or at the restaurant. And we'll pick maybe each 3 or 4 questions out of the whole 80 questions in the game. We'll pick a few that we find interesting that we'd like to both share about. And that really is kind of an assist in deepening the conversation rather quickly.
Right. Right. And it can be an icebreaker. Not, I mean, you don't just sit down and go, here you go. But yeah, after you've
set it
built some rapport with the other person.
Get some instructions with it, read a couple of lines from the instructions.
So what is your, do you have feedback from people using your book?
All kinds of feedback.
Yeah. Or okay, let me rephrase that. What is some of the feedback you?
Well, one of the, just a piece of feedback from the game, which has been something I've heard a lot, is the person, I just saw the brightness and all the positive lovability of the person when we had those cards. And when we didn't have the cards, it was just a little harder to get real connection and real depth.
Yeah.
So sometimes people have said that, or it cuts through a lot and moves things along much faster. You learn things about the person that you wouldn't have known for like a year,
right?
2 or 3 dates.
Yeah, I'm impressed with when we played it one night after a session. We played the Getting Real one. It makes you think. Because there are kind of some rules in answering that, and they need to actually be short and kind of poignant responses to the question. And you really got to think. And so I could see that leading into getting a lot further, a lot sooner in the understanding of the other person if they're, partaking in this.
Yeah, yeah. And for the book, one of the biggest pieces of feedback about the book Truth in Dating is that the title is very scary to people. It's very scary. They go, what? Why would I want to do that?
Right, because it's supposed to be our best foot forward. We're supposed to put on a show. We're supposed to, be on our best behavior and put this front on. And really, when you think about it, both people are kind of sparring to get through that, to see through that and get to the real person.
Most people really do want to have a genuine heart connection where they feel safe.
Yeah. What else?
And the idea of truth in dating may be scary, and I want to say it's not for everybody, but if you are dating and you kind of bring up the idea, to the other person, and you're not even sure how to do it yourself, but you bring up the idea and you admit, look, all of us have been conditioned to not tell the truth in dating because we're so worried about the outcome.
Right.
I don't mean out and out lying, like,
Yeah, to deceive.
I'm not trying to promote the idea that people on dates lie, although some do. It's more they're just playing it safe, kind of like what you've demonstrated. Oh, should I ask this question? Is it too soon? All that kind of worrying. And that keeps you, when you're worrying, you're not really in the present moment where the juiciness and the aliveness is. And that's what you want to bring to a relationship is your juice.
Right. But that makes me think of something. I remember my mom told me a long time ago. She goes, you don't, or not a long time ago, not long enough ago, but you don't let your heart out right away. You don't just give it all to somebody. So meaning you find out about them first, and I guess as time goes by, you're trusting them more and more with it. Okay. So when you say bring the juice and bring all that,
I don't know what that means, but you don't get committed and latch on to somebody as your life.
This is it, right?
Until you've really vetted. The word vetted comes to mind. Until you've checked the person out.
Right.
Just like in a job, they're applying for a job.
Yeah. Why do you think people skip that so much? They skip that part of the process, the truth in dating, right? They skip kind of they just are, it seems like, and I'm guilty as well, looking for all the good parts and ignoring all the red flags.
Wow. It's basically either fear of being alone or fear that another person's never going to come along. It's a scarcity. It's a scarcity mindset. So, like I gotta make this work because this one is so super important. Well, I mean, that's nuts.
Right. Right. Because if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. You're just
that up. It may or may not be super important. If this person is really well suited for you, yeah, that's important. You don't want to let that die.
Right.
But there's got to be a mutual attraction, so you've got to find out all these things, and they do take time. And people want to hitch up kind of fast. Not all people. Some people are super slow.
Yeah.
They're the opposite of you and me, John. But you and I, it sounds like we both typically, we really want to get into something good, not just anything.
Right.
But we might have a tendency to,
hurry.
Get connected with somebody too soon, or have sex too soon, or
Well, you know what? That brings up a good point, because with the last person I was dating, she made a point that I never thought of. She goes, and she was much slower for the sex part, and I respected that. That was kind of nice, instead of just jumping into bed, because I think women they're just too eager. I don't know if it's because they want to please or because they think that's what the man wants. Or
you're so hot, John.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know about that.
That's not true for all guys.
But the reasoning behind that was because when you're having sex, the brain is creating oxytocin, right? And you start pair bonding, and all the hormones start flowing, and that can cloud the judgment of the current status of the relationship. I thought that was brilliant.
That's right.
I'm like, that's okay. I like that. So I think that's something to take into consideration too. I guess if you're, like you said earlier,
learn this in high school. They should learn that the sexual drugs, like what you just said, the oxytocin, those are addictive substances, and they cloud your judgment.
Well, right. In many of the books I've read in years past, working up to where I am today, there is that common theme. I mean, even there's one called The Whole Brain Child, and they're just talking about raising children. But there's that theme of getting that part of your brain, like a dopamine hit, whether good or bad. You can get addicted to that cycle. I was with that woman for several years, and it was a very tumultuous relationship where I would get yelled at and then things would get good. And I was like, okay, this is it. But yeah, it's almost like I'd start walking around on eggshells again, waiting for the shoe to drop, and then it would happen. And as logically now looking back as that going, that's nuts. Why am I putting myself through this? And I know why, and I've worked through all that. But in the moment, it is like a hit. It is a cycle of where you kind of just, it's a euphoria almost.
Yeah, and
It's
something
up.
else beyond the sex hormones that are at play there with the ups and downs, the roller coaster relationship. When you have fights, it triggers people's fear of loss, fear of abandonment a lot of times, and then they come back together even more magnetically if they've had those fears stimulated. And so what I want to warn people about is fear of abandonment looks a lot like true love.
Right.
But it's not true love.
That's really good. That's a great quote.
Remember that, folks. It took me half my life.
The fear of abandonment looks like true love.
For that, because I would go, oh, this guy loves me so much. I'll never find anybody who loves me so much. Well, they were loving me so much, possessively and all that, because their fear of abandonment was always on high. That is not love.
No. And then let me ask you something on that.
But you can heal those fears if you work together with a counselor.
Well, right. You help me in
rid of the person, but I'm saying you got to know what's what. Sorry.
No, that was my big breakthrough in our first workshop was the fear of abandonment, because I linked that to my father of always chasing his approval, his love. And that's what I was doing in that relationship. I was continuing to do the same thing. And that was the beginning point that I can point to of the journey of figuring that out. But in general, I mean, why do people, because I think that's prevalent in society. Why do we all have such a fear of abandonment, in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, we all grew up little and helpless, and we were dependent on big people, our parents, usually, who were busy and also hadn't totally developed their own personality so that they could just be present to a child. So abandonment is built into the human experience. Plus, the way babies are born, in this country at least, the whole hospital thing is for the convenience of the doctors. Not all. I mean, some of the hospitals are very enlightened now, and they don't separate the child from the mother right up. But when I was born, they just take you and put you in a crib by yourself. So of course I'm going to have a fear of abandonment. That was my first relationship experience. Was we were connected, safe, and then where did she go? So most of the fear of abandonment memories are not actual rememberable because they're more like cellular body.
Well, your amygdala, right? It programmed in there.
They're really stored in the amygdala, and then those memories are like fear and danger memories. So that, like you said, when the woman then pushes you away, it's kind of like
it's almost like death, right?
From your childhood,
Yeah,
it triggers the whole thing.
You have a visceral fear of it's almost like death in a way.
Yes.
And as a grown man, you can't logically go, well, but if that's really linking back to being a child or a baby, I can see that. My mom, it's funny when you said that made me remember my mom told me growing up when I was just a baby that Dr. Spock was the big deal, where you would leave the kids to just scream and cry in the other room, and you didn't breastfeed, you didn't pick them up, you didn't do any of this stuff. So maybe that's where some of my issues came from.
I had that. I had the same kind of story when I was an infant and a little toddler.
Yeah.
But Dr. Spock and a lot of us did. It's like your kid, you don't want to spoil your kid. You want to have them independent and tough, so you don't cater to their every whim. But actually, now we know better. We know that if a need is met, I mean, this is an ideal scenario. If a child's need is met at that developmental stage, like the 2-year-old has the need to explore
Mm-hmm.
his or her environment. But if the parent is overprotective, that need doesn't get met. So then, then they become chaotic as adults. But each stage has a developmental task and learning. And if you are allowed by excellent parenting to fulfill all those needs,
Mm-hmm.
then those needs don't hang around, and you actually do become a more independent, self-reliant person by having your needs met, not by being deprived.
Right. Wow. That's we could
Isn't
do a
most of
whole
our story. Most of ours did have some deprivation in it, or some over control or abuse or something.
and it
'cause
could
there's-
even happen later in life too, couldn't it?
yes, it can. Yes, it can. You can have your first true love broke your heart, and that can be a fear of abandonment
Yeah.
later on, 50 or 60 years old.
Yeah, I agree. They don't teach this stuff in school. They don't teach feelings. They don't teach you how to balance your checkbook. They don't teach you how to communicate with one another, right? There's a lot of things actually school does not prepare you to do. And I think one of the biggest things that would be a foundation of everything you do in your life would be communication, and just
Yes.
understanding that when I'm talking to someone and they're triggering me. I started with a business coach about a month ago.
Mhm.
And he goes, John, one of your biggest triggers is incompetence. When you see somebody being incompetent, that triggers you. I go, it does. I go, it just really makes me angry. Not ignorance, not when they don't know something. It's when somebody is kind of being willfully ignorant, and they really don't want to try, and they really don't care. And I see that kind of incompetence in someone. It really bugs me. And what he said is, he goes, what you're really mad at is the fact that you don't have the skills to handle someone like that. And I was like, oh, okay. I think that's a good point.
That's in there. And also, what do you feel when somebody behaves incompetently? Do you feel let down almost?
I feel angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the top level. When we're working with triggers, we have layers of feelings. It's like a parfait.
Right.
Top level is anger. I don't like this. This is not acceptable.
That's right.
And then, okay, but what need of mine is not being met that kind of like makes me angry?
Right. Yeah. I'm gonna think about that. That's a good. Yes. You're bringing.
Far, but it's
right. No, you're reminding me of the workshops now, and I need to go through that process.
Yeah. So you have to look at yourself. It's not just his incompetence, but I know for me, it's something when somebody's behaving in an incompetent way. I feel a fear that I'm not like valued, or my needs are not important.
Yeah.
It kind of even goes back to early childhood deprivation.
Well, right. It's like it could be you're being ignored in some fashion.
Yeah.
And you're being kind of pushed aside. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing what we should probably do one of these on that, because I believe, right, you knew John Bradshaw?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the guy's a genius for what he did. I'd love to get into that in a show and talk more about that, because the raising of the kids, because part of my wholehearted man thing, or just what I'm working on, is getting fathers to understand the value of a parent, at least one parent, staying home and raising the child. You and I have never spoken about this, but earlier you kind of alluded to the fact of how, if you're just born and handed off to somebody else to raise, or at daycare all day, in my opinion, that's going to create a disconnect where the child is being handed off to a facility where you're never going to be loved like you are by your parent. You just can't. They can care, and they may have only 4 kids that adult has to deal with, but it's not the same as when you just have the mother there, or the father. And I think that goes to build these issues in people, where you have a fear of rejection, you have a fear of abandonment, you kind of have these triggers, and you don't grow up healthy. I'm divorced, and when my daughter has said, even from a young age, about the divorce, or this is making me, why can't you guys be together? I don't say, well, just because that's the way it is. I go, we should be together, and I'm very sorry this
Good.
is not the case. And if I were you in your position, I would feel mad or sad depending on what she was feeling about it
Good.
too. I'm validating.
Good. That's great, John.
Yeah, even my autistic daughter, who's 15 now, about 2 years ago, when I wash her hair, and the sensory part of it, she didn't like when you'd scrub. And so she would just and get all frustrated. And I gave her words. I'm like, say, that's annoying, Papa. That I don't like that, Papa. And she did it. So now instead of she says, that's annoying. She gets it out and has a voice more.
That's one of the parenting things that a lot of kids don't get too, is help putting their feelings into words.
Mm-hmm.
Just like bonding and feeling emotionally safe, children need what you just gave your daughter.
Yeah, my cousin came to visit last Tuesday. We've only seen each other twice in the past 20 years, and we've kind of rekindled the relationship, and it's great. And she's a great lady. And we were talking, and it's funny when you hook up with somebody from family and they bring up other remembrances that you don't remember. But she goes, yeah, one of the big things in the family was, children should be seen and not heard. And any conversation around politics or anything like that were not for kids. You had to be excluded because you just aren't smart enough or capable enough. And I've never had that thought with my girls. They're always included in everything, obviously age appropriate. But because you get their mind thinking, they feel validated, they feel included. I mean, it's just night and day. And I'm hoping I'm doing
thing. Letting kids express themselves and being an attentive listener. All children need that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I could probably talk to you forever.
Yeah, this is very enjoyable.
Thank you. I know we got a little off topic, but I think really it all goes back to the truth in dating and the getting triggered. And my opinion, philosophy on self-improvement, self-help, healing, whatever you want to call it, is you've kind of got to identify what happened, and then you've got to kind of work through it. And then the third part of that is you need to go practice the way you want it to be. You can't live only in one of those boxes. You kind of have to really acknowledge what happened, kind of vet it, work through it, and then also moving forward, you go practice the new style, the new way you want it. I'm sure there's
in the 5-minute relationship repair book, that's what I teach couples to do, and it could be dating partners or parents and children. Every time there's a glitch in your communication where you get disconnected and it feels lousy, you come back afterwards and you say, if I had it to do over and could have told you what I was really feeling and needing, this is what was really going on. And so you get practice like an hour later or a day later to do it right with that same person.
Yeah, so I think that's powerful.
Get that in a relationship, as well as like what you're describing, which is, you learn it here and then you can apply it elsewhere.
Right. Yeah, it's and I just all that goes towards having a better dating life and hopefully finding that person. And in the process of finding that person, like you said at the beginning of the show, is we should be dating kind of a lot. We aren't probably meant to be with everybody we've ever gone out. Well, I know we're not. So, it's understanding that going into it and not being all consumed by it and coming from that place of scarcity or desperation. And
can I talk about, I know we're about to wrap up here.
No, we're fine.
Have our listeners have one actual communication skill, other than saying your wants and your needs and your feelings. That's all, in the book John's talking about. And the other skill these skills bring your conversation into the present moment where there's really some juice between you and me here and now. And so the other skill is sharing self-talk. So somebody's saying, somebody's talking about their ex-girlfriend on a first date.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, Joe, can I share what's coming up for me right now? What I'm thinking when I'm listening to you is you're telling me about this beautiful model that you used to date.
Uh-huh.
I'm saying to myself, I wonder if he's trying to impress me that he can attract really beautiful women.
Right.
I might say that.
Right.
I'm not saying it to be right, but I'm saying it because I've been having the thought, and I'm saying it to clear the air. And, like I said, I'm not attacking
right.
a person. If you have love in your heart, you can share these things. And the more you take risks to share your honesty, the less fear you will have, and the more love will be in your heart, because you kind of learn by trial and error.
Yeah. 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 I remember in the first workshop too, there was a moment where everybody, I can't remember exactly what it was about, but I think somebody had to either ask somebody a question or make a statement about something. And then we went around the room and everybody had to give their interpretation basically of that response. And what struck me was how many different, because we all think ours is the correct interpretation. And it was like, wow, everybody just about had a different interpretation. And at least in my opinion, many of those were valid. Like it was like, oh, I never thought about that. So, right, this guy could be telling you about his ex-girlfriend because actually he's not necessarily bragging and he's trying to impress you that he could get a girl. He may just be awkward for all we know and just doesn't know what to talk about. And he just goes to the last place he was. And he's right. It depends, of course, what he's really talking about. But
all kinds of motivations.
Yeah. And we got to give the other person the opportunity to, I guess, kind of explain themselves or give a reason for that. And that's why I've always loved and I use it with clients all the time, people at work, the imagine. I'm imagining this is what's going on instead of accusing them. Well, when you say this, I know you're talking like this or you mean this. Right. It's like, I have no idea. Yeah, my big lesson from that round robin of the room there was, I don't know what the hell I'm thinking. I could be right. I could be wrong. I need to shut up and actually just ask the person sitting across from me what they meant.
Float out your hunch or your imagining or your self-talk. And then you say, is there anything to that?
Right.
I'm truly open. You're not trying to shove your interpretation, your imagining down somebody's throat.
Right. And I think we do that because it's either you beat vulnerability to the punch, because if they come back with, well, or even if it's a roundabout way, but kind of makes you or validates your original thought, then you've beaten them to the punch by distancing yourself, right? If I can distance from you by being a little harsh or being rude, then if I'm correct in my assumption, it won't hurt so much. And so, yeah, you have to be vulnerable and open yourself up, because maybe that is the actual answer. Maybe they are thinking about
self-talk. You want to share self-talk that's usually more about yourself and what's going on between yourself and the other person. Like right now I'm saying to myself, this is fun getting to know John. Where do we go from here?
Right.
And that's my self-talk.
Right. No, I was actually thinking the same thing.
Flirting techniques, folks. One of the best flirting techniques is sharing self-talk. And there's a whole chapter in the book about how to take whatever's going on inside of you and make it into kind of an interesting little one-line thing that reveals your vulnerable fears, your vulnerable wishes, that type of thing. But you call it your self-talk because it's really what your mind is doing at the moment.
Right. Okay. Well, why don't we wrap it up? It's been about an hour.
An hour, huh?
Yeah. I appreciate everything. It's been great talking to you and seeing you again. Maybe we'll talk afterwards and see maybe if we could do this again, but I really appreciate you coming on. It's Dr. Susan Campbell. She's the author of Truth in Dating. There's many other things. I had this book up, The Power Struggle, because I thought that was very apropos. in certain
Yeah.
way. I mean, we could sit here and have, 500 segments on these different things because it affects everybody. But thank you so much. And
send people to my website. That's where they
I
can
will.
buy
Yes.
the games.
Yes. What is that website? I'll link it below, but
All right. It's SusanCampbell.com.
SusanCampbell.com.
Campbell is spelled like Campbell soup.
Okay. And every they can get all the literature there.
Yeah, they can get my upcoming workshops.
Okay,
and,
good.
Sign up for my free newsletter, and I even have a monthly free group coaching call where you can get free advice from Dr. Susan.
Nice. Well, thank you again. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk soon.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Susan. Bye-bye.